I always say patience of results, urgency of effort. The only times I was very just unhealthy is when I would allow myself to just get totally impatient with the process or the progress. I think you want to be patient. The results are going to come, but you got to be somewhat maniacal and obsessed with the effort and the improvement and the progress that you're looking to achieve. I think, that's why I still call ourselves a 20-year overnight success, because it seems like, look at them, they're just, tap dancing. But they don't tell you, they didn't tell us. We sort of, like I said, got into franchising naively, the long march it's going to take to potentially get to the other side of that chasm, if you even get there. And then once you get there, there's a whole nother new set of problems. It's not like you just set up camp and chill and bask in the sunset. It's an ongoing march, and you got to decide what's the next hill that you're going to climb.
Nick, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
This is for the audience. This is one of the most anticipated interviews for myself in a really long time. So your ability to sit down, we're obviously in your guys' library. This place is sick. This is dope. My first question, we're talking about a little bit off air. Your ability to make this business, which is in the home services business, which is everybody's kind of thing, is the boring business sector. Your ability to make your brand so cool is mind-blowing to me. Was that innately in you, or your co-founder, or how did you?
Yeah, well, look, I think for us, it started with a catchy and creative name.
Mm-hmm.
It was kind of a pattern interrupt. And, the story is we were in college. We were looking for something to do. My best friend from high school, his mom had a beat-up cargo van. She let us borrow it, and then she looked us up and down and was like, you guys could be college hunks who haul junk. And we just kind of laughed about it at first, and they were like, well, that's kind of catchy. Let's put that on a flyer. And I think we realized very quickly, the lightning bulb was very early on, that it was a pattern interrupt. It's not what people typically associated with moving and hauling. It kind of created or conjured up a different image for people. It was playful. People made jokes about it. People asked questions about it. So when we saw that early on, and then sort of saw that reinforced as we did some creative guerrilla marketing, or we got a bright and orange truck with our logo on it finally, and saw the heads turn, or people take pictures of it if they've seen it for the first time. And then we read a book called Purple Cow by Seth Godin, and he's talking about if you're driving down a country road and you see a field of brown cows, you've seen it before, you're going to keep driving. But if there's a purple cow there, it's remarkable, it's different. You're going to talk about it, tell your friends and neighbors about it. So that, I think, early just sort of feedback loop of what the market responded to. And to be honest, I don't consider myself a boring guy. So I was having fun with this playful concept, the fun name, the media attention that we were able to drum up from sort of these, two local guys making a national business. All of that has, I think, helped us develop the business. And I realize it's important because we are a consumer service brand, which anybody can really do it. So how do we stand out? And we've always been very intentional about not just the media or the branding, but also ultimately what I say is the stake, which is the service experience that people have when they ultimately engage with our business.
It's funny because your guys we're based out of Naples and Fort Myers, and you guys have a location in Naples or in Fort Myers. And the funny part about your guys' business is I don't know any other moving companies or like what you guys do. I can't think of any brand name besides you guys. And I thought you guys were headquartered there. The amount of recognition I could associate between you guys and what you do. And it was so crazy to see this brand be so immediately, oh my gosh, I of course I know who they are, but yet I didn't know what you guys did. The brand recognition was so crazy. Did you guys, your colors is also just something that just pops. Did you guys immediately early on set that orange and that green, that contrast?
Yeah, so that was also something we kind of stumbled into when we decided after we did this business during college summers. Most kids would stop after graduation. They go and do something in the real world. We tried that briefly in the real world and then said, you know what, this isn't for us. Let's quit our jobs and start this business full time and see how far we can get it. And we haven't quit 20 years later, so we're still putting one foot in front of the other. But when we decided we were going to make it a full-time business, we were like, okay, we need a color scheme. And we started looking at both professional and college sports teams. I was a sports fan. So it's like, okay. And we were from the DC area, actually. So we initially thought University of Maryland, black and red, maybe. Maybe what about Carolina blue? It's got the Air Jordan Association. And we were just kind of spinning our wheels a little bit. And actually, this designer that was in Omar's mom's furniture store, he was there, and we were like, hey, what are two colors that really pop, that go together? And he was like, actually, orange and green. We're seeing that a lot in modern furniture. And it was like another light bulb moment, because Omar actually went to the University of Miami. So somehow we hadn't even contemplated the Miami colors, even though he had won a business plan there for the idea our senior year of college. And so then the more we thought about it, not only because there was some personal affiliation that he had to that school, but that school is a small private institution, but their sports team is infamous. Everybody knows them, and their brand as a sports team spans well beyond just the university itself. And so we said, okay, there's some significance to the fact that the business kind of had some business planning that took place there. Omar went there, and it's a bright and colorful pop. And it obviously has worked for their sports program. People will wear Miami Hurricanes shirts that didn't go to the school, or that aren't even sports fans, but they just like what that brand represents. And so now we tell people that our orange represents our playful, bright, vibrant culture, and the green represents our environmentally friendly hauling practices, because not everybody likes the U. We don't want to polarize the Gators fans or the the Seminoles fans or anything else, but that is actually how it originated. But again, it was, how do we stand out? And we've had to continuously think about, sort of reinventing ways to stand out.
It's so insane to me that the thing that sets you guys apart, so like, obviously we'll get into like the entire business model, but what sets you guys apart so uniquely in a space that is, again, somebody who's, and Ryan, his first business was a pressure washing business, and his first job was hauling junk. Mm-hmm. And it's like this very low barrier to entry game is dominated by you guys in two things that were almost like these happenstances of like, like I always say there's three types of luck: dumb luck where you work so hard that you make your own luck, and then luck where you're like smart enough to be able to like identify luck. And something so unbelievable that sets your guys' brand apart 20 years later just came from just his mom, and then these like,
I think we had a combination of all three of those lucks that you just mentioned. It was sort of it was like connecting the dots. It was, when the door opened and said like, hey, it's a catchy name, we knew enough, either intuitively or recognized the response that we were getting just early on enough that was like a door worth walking to. We didn't have any other bright ideas. We weren't inventing the next TikTok or Snapchat. So it's like, okay, this is kind of fun. I didn't grow up thinking I was going to own a moving and hauling business, but we get to really spin up our creativity with this. And it's a conversation starter when we're telling our relatives at the family reunion what we're doing. And we kind of initially got annoyed by the questions. People were like, college hunks, are you guys taking your shirts off to move? Or, are they all really in college? Are they all really hunks? And so, and honestly, 20 years later, people still ask those questions. So I learned to embrace those questions because people were asking questions. They were interested. It wasn't just like something that they didn't pay attention to. And so I kind of reframed my perspective on that. We made HUNKS into an acronym, which is now our brand promise. So we preach that both internally and externally. It stands for honest, uniformed, nice, knowledgeable service. So we kind of redefined the word hunk, thinking that, hey, what is it we really want to deliver? And yes, people might have a different image when they think college hunk, but we want to sort of respect the heritage of how it started when we were two, college guys doing the work ourselves, to what it's become, which is this national brand, and never get complacent about that, and never take for granted that somebody else could come, have a shinier truck or a brighter logo. And, a lot of the media outlets that exist today didn't exist when we first started, right? There wasn't all these different social media channels and all these different ways of broadcasting yourself. And so we've had to evolve and adapt to those things as well. I think you were mentioning before we got started, putting stuff out on YouTube or putting stuff out on socials. I still think we could do better, but I don't want to just ignore the fact that these new channels exist, and there's other people coming up behind us because of the low barriers to entry.
So from some of the stuff that I heard, eMyth was like a huge unlock for you. Talk me through, because I want to understand the mindset of, were you always an entrepreneur? Did you always have that drive? Like you and Omar, best friends, started this business still together 20 years later. That's mind blowing to me because our company is a bunch of college buddies that just started this together. And so I hear that 20 years later, still growing this massive business is super cool. But was that innately in both of you? Like, or was this like a way to make some quick side cash in the summer and then it just snowballed into it?
Yeah. I mean, I think when we were in it growing up, I don't think we realized that a lot of our energy and restless energy was entrepreneurial energy, just sort of untapped or unchanneled. I think if I look back, we were both somewhat one might consider troublemakers in high school and middle school. We, didn't always listen to the teacher. One teacher, I think, questioned whether Omar even owned the textbook for the class. I was the one that wouldn't sit still. I think I had to carry around a behavior folder in third grade to have each of my teachers sign it for me at the end of class saying that I actually listened and paid attention. And so in hindsight, and actually you think about how sometimes kids get boxed in and labeled early on. And thank goodness, we had both parents that believed in us as well as, coaches, mentors, and teachers along the way that, didn't just dismiss us as quote unquote bad kids or bad seeds or whatever, that we had the confidence to try to go do something productive. Because I think a lot of people that maybe have those energies or those restless enthusiasms may pursue things that may not be the most ethical, and they don't have anybody to kind of bring them back and focus them into the positive and productive. And so I think that in hindsight, I look back, like my sister and I had competing lemonade stands. Like she said at one, she was a year and a half older than me, and she was charging 25 cents for lemonade. And my mom was like, why don't you go do your lemonade stand with Allison? I was like, well, no, I don't want to split that money with her. So I went and set up a competing lemonade stand next to hers. And I actually was charging $1 for lemonade, which is even more. My first lesson in pricing is that, charge what you're worth. Don't try to compete on price, right? Be the Starbucks of your industry. And so in hindsight, I look back and I see some of those entrepreneurial energies, but I honestly didn't know what the word entrepreneur was until we started our business full time. And I'll be telling people what I'm doing. And they're like, oh, so you're an entrepreneur. Like, oh, so that's what that, tongue twister word means. Because it was also, again, 20 years ago, wasn't as, I would say, as viable of a pursuit. There wasn't shows like Shark Tank. There weren't social media channels dedicated to entrepreneurship. There wasn't podcasts where you could learn about this and get inspired and excited about it. It was actually viewed more so as a risky path. I mean, there were kind of self-help gurus that are out preaching about entrepreneurship and, betting on yourself and making your own path. But again, that was sort of viewed as, at least the way I was raised, as a risky endeavor. Like stay focused, get good grades, get into school, get a job. And so until, again, we sort of stumbled into this outlet that we could attach our energy to, we felt restless.
It's so interesting, that point of we're in a culture now where that I was that same kid. Like I'd never did my homework. One of the best examples of this was in fourth grade. I was taking a test. And I guess it was a smart ass moment at that time, but there was like multiple choice, and I ended up putting, it was A, B, C, D, and I just put E, and I wrote a different answer to the question because I forget what the question was, but I obviously got put in detention for that. It was like this very and my mom, who wasn't entrepreneurial, was always like trying to be like, there's something wrong, wrong with you. And it wasn't for her, it wasn't like malicious. It was just like, I don't get, like, why doesn't he ever do his homework? Why is he always trying to find the easy way out? Granted, in the business that I'm in now, that's almost looked at as like a positive thing.
Right.
So for you guys, what job did you have right out of college?
So we did the hauling junk thing the summer before our senior year. Then we graduated and we got what I call regular jobs. I was working at an economic analysis organization in Washington, D.C. It was a great way to apply my degree. Omar was working at a marketing consulting. It was a healthcare consulting business, but he was in the marketing department, another big publicly traded company. And we were working like 3 blocks away from each other in these DC high-rise office buildings. And miserable, and it wasn't, some of my coworkers enjoyed what they were doing, and that was fine for them, but it was unfulfilling in the pit of my stomach as I was like thinking out to the next 10, 20, 30 years of my life. I was like, there's got to be something else. I remember telling my dad about it one day after work, and he was like, well, Nick, you're better educated than I was. You're smarter than I am. So if you don't do better than I did, you messed up. And he was kind of like tough love, like father, jokingly, tongue in cheek. But I actually used that as a bit of motivation when he said it. I was like, I was like, he's right. I got to find something that I'm, excited about doing, that's purposeful, and that I can apply my talents to. And what I'm doing right now isn't it. So I actually I wrote an email right after my dad said that, and was like, Omar, we did this business last summer. It could be a viable year-round business. What's our timeline for starting it year-round? Exclamation point, question mark. And he wrote me back all capital letters. My timeline's right now, exclamation point, let's do this. And so we kind of, I think, encouraged each other to both jump and take the leap. And I think having a friend at the time become a business partner, and having our parents sort of see how unfulfilled we were sitting in the cubicle at the office after college, when getting smacked in the face with the real world and saying like, this would be a lot of fun to go do this over here and it could actually work. We had the confidence to run after it.
So how long were you guys like, both of you guys fulfilling everything, doing everything? Like, what was that?
It was, I would say, close to a year where we were doing all the work ourselves. And I always tell the story, we had an 800 number. We bought an 800 number to make ourselves look bigger. It was on the back of the truck, routed to our cell phone. Anytime somebody called to complain about driving, I'd be in the driver's seat answering the phone saying, yeah, we'll fire those guys back at the office. We'll tell them to be safer on the road. And so yeah, you mentioned the book, The E-Myth. We started to burn out. It was very exciting at first when we were doing everything for ourselves, by ourselves. But eventually we were like, man, this is hard work.
Yeah.
Right. We're having to wake up early to empty the trucks. Then we're having to go out and do this backbreaking labor. And then we're having to call the missed calls that we didn't get to answer because we were moving the furniture. And we're, then we got to, put something in a spreadsheet that documents how much money we made, how much we spent. And when we read that book, it was like you said, another light bulb moment for us is, okay, if we're ever going to have another truck, let alone another location, we've got to start documenting how we do everything. And it was kind of like a duh, like, of course you do, but that hadn't occurred to us. We were just kind of doing everything a little bit, improvisationally and ad hoc. So we started just making checklists, like just simple checklists. How do we wear the uniform? How do we greet our clients? What do we say when they answer the door? How do we answer the phone? And that became just the very early stages of a system that allowed us to then go hire somebody. And of course, we didn't have any hiring systems, nor did we have hiring experience. So at the beginning, it was kind of like any warm body will do, right? It's like, hey, let's hire somebody to lift the other end of that couch. Well, where do you find that person? Oh, let's call our friends' younger brothers and see if they want to help us. And then it extended to Craigslist. And it's like, well, let's just hire whoever responds to our first, the first person to respond to our Craigslist ad. Let's bring him in or her in. They look like they can do the job. So we had no vetting process. We had no training system. The first time I can remember, we actually let somebody go out on the truck without either one of us because they had watched us do it a few times. We figured they would know how to do it. They spent like 12 hours out and they brought back like $50 of revenue. So like I'm doing the math. I'm like, okay, we just paid this guy $10 an hour at 12 hours. That's $120. And he brought back $50. So we lost $70, for him to go out and do the work. Like this ain't adding up. So like, we had all sorts of just missing systems. We hadn't trained him about how to sell the work. We obviously didn't have any accountability or internal controls on, hey, if there's no jobs on the schedule, you're not just driving around or hanging out at the 7-Eleven. So we kind of figured all of that stuff out through trial and error.
How much were you and Omar making before you made your first hire?
Because we were such a low overhead business out of the gates, we were still living at our parents' house. We were still doing all the work ourselves. We had a payment on the truck and we paid for fuel and I think insurance and disposal costs if we had to get rid of stuff. So we were pocketing all the profit, but we weren't really pocketing it because we were like, well, we're going to need another truck. We're going to need an office. We're going to need to hire somebody. So we were kind of reinvesting it into the business. So it was kind of like, I would say like, as people say, bootstrap or hand to mouth or, sort of shoestring budget, like the way we started the business. We didn't go raise capital. And thank God we didn't, because I think we wouldn't have known how to be a custodian of a large amount of capital out of the gates because we were just kind of figuring stuff out on our own. So it was kind of like, okay, we've got a little bit extra money in the bank account. Let's try this marketing thing, or let's go hire somebody to answer the phone this time around. Or, okay, let's go look at some offices. Maybe we can sublease a space and we can park our trucks there instead of in front of our parents' house, which they were very happy about when we finally did that. So So yeah, I mean, I think the first summer when it was just us, we probably made a few $1,000, which, to a couple college kids was a lot of money. And then once we quit our jobs and started full time, we were off to the races pretty quickly. I think in our second full year of business, we did over $1 million in revenue.
Holy
and
smokes.
That was like, wow, okay, this thing is taking off.
Holy smokes, $1 million in your second year.
Yeah.
That's insane. So that it pretty much, do you attribute that to like the brand, or what was your early marketing at that point?
It was a lot of guerrilla marketing, signs, flyers, door hangers, truck parking, which we call parketing. There would be people to be like, oh, I see your trucks all over town. You must have 10, 15 trucks, probably similar to what you saw down in Fort Myers. And we only had one truck. We were just parking it strategically in different locations. Or, if we didn't have jobs on the calendar, one of us, me or Omar, because, we weren't paying ourselves, we'd go drive the truck around and park in high visible locations. And so, I think the trying to generate the grassroots business, the referral business, all of that was helpful. We started the business full time in like 2005, 2006. So that was when the housing market was really cranking still before it took a nosedive. So we kind of rode that wave up. Of course, we started franchising right before it took a nosedive. And so that was like our big early learning lesson that things don't always go up and to the right. There's going to be some major setbacks and learnings. And I think that setback helped us really develop our grit and resiliency muscle. Cause like at the beginning, it was like, let's go get the business. It's out there. And then when the business wasn't as plentiful and we were trying to do new expansion into franchising and into moving services, because when we started, it was almost primarily junk removal. Like it was like the wind turned and smacked us in the face, and we had to figure out our way through that, which again, I think was probably the most valuable lesson we had in those early days as well.
So the idea, this is something I think a lot of people, especially in today's market, back when you started, entrepreneurship wasn't this buzzword that it is today. Now everybody and their mother wants to be an entrepreneur. They want to start their own business. And I think especially now we're losing a lot of entrepreneurs because, through 2020 when disposable income was at an all-time high and everybody's spending money, it was like this kind of like, oh, like money's just free. Like, oh, like everybody's having record years. Like it's very easy to build a business in that economic market. Take me through, obviously, so you guys are making all this money. When did you make the decision to do franchising?
So shortly after we read the E-Myth, in that book that talks about franchising, it says, develop your business as if you're going to franchise it, even if you're not. And they uses McDonald's as an example, like create a template that could replicate that business so you can remove yourself from the day-to-day. And so franchising was kind of a buzzword when we read that. We didn't really know what it meant or entailed. I would say we had kind of a maybe naive and glamorized view of what franchising was really going to be. We thought, hey, well, it's really hard running this business ourselves. If we franchise it, we could, let other people run those businesses and pay us a royalty, and it'll be passive income is what we thought. But we didn't, know that until you have 50 or more like 100 franchisees, you're really not, the royalty stream really isn't sufficient enough to sustain all the overhead that's necessary to develop a true franchise support system. And so, I think we kind of jumped into it a little bit prematurely. We didn't have a second location, which I would have probably recommended we had done, or I recommend to others when they ask me if they should franchise. I always say, open a second location first and see how that location does. Maybe you don't need to franchise. Maybe you can open up multiple locations yourself, or at least can you prove the model before you go sell it to somebody else. And then, we moved down to Tampa to start franchising. And again, that's when sort of the floor got pulled out from the housing market. And I think we sort of had some moments of like, is this going to work? We got franchisees who are struggling, but we had, I think, a very never quit mindset that allowed us to just kind of keep trudging through. I didn't have any alternatives at the time. So I was like, this has to work.
It's funny because this is something I've come back to. The idea that we all idolize the Rocky cutscene in the movie. Like the down on your luck, the music starts playing and it's like, oh my gosh, like he's fighting for his life in these clips. That's a 2-minute clip in a movie normally.
Yeah.
In business, that's multiple years.
Yeah. 5 years.
Yeah, exactly. How did you mentally deal with that rocky cutscene time when your back's against the wall every day? You're like, oh man, like people want to idolize like a moment, like a day, a sit down with their team, and they're like, oh, we figured it out. Like now everything's going to turn around.
I joke, my dad watches a golf video and he's like, I got a breakthrough with my swing. I was like, another breakthrough, Dad. How's your handicap? But no, I see what you're saying. I always say patience of results, urgency of effort. You know, the only times I was very just unhealthy is when I would allow myself to just get totally impatient with the process or the progress. I think you want to be patient. The results are going to come, but you got to be somewhat maniacal and obsessed with the effort and the improvement and the progress that you're looking to achieve. I think, you know, that's why I still call ourselves a 20-year overnight success, because it seems like, oh, like, look at them. They're just, you know, tap dancing. But like, they don't tell you, and they didn't tell us. We sort of, like I said, got into franchising naively, like the long march it's going to take to potentially get to the other side of that chasm, if you even get there. And then once you get there, there's a whole nother new set of problems. It's not like you just set up camp and chill and bask in the sunset. Like it's an ongoing march, and you got to decide what's the next hill that you're going to climb. And then when does the wind change or the season change? And so like even the climate we're in now, right? We're in a high interest rate market. The moving industry is not as abundant. There's a lot of competitors that have entered in. And so I've tried to stress to my team, like, we can't just be sitting here saying, you know, rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic saying like, oh, when the interest rates come down or when the housing market comes back. Like, no, like if you go 3 weeks without rain, you know, you call that a drought and you just wait till it starts raining again. But if it's 3 years, like, you're living in a desert, you're living in another climate, another environment. So we got to learn how to thrive in this environment. And so I want to sort of stress that mindset to our team, to our franchise owners. That doesn't mean you go like start painting houses and just, you know, chase a new, different idea. But it is, you get gritty mentally, resilient, and then you just try to get smarter and craftier with how you execute and how you gain market share. And, you know, for us, some of the things we're doing, we're adding long distance, we're looking at storage, things we haven't done because we haven't had to, but, you know, they're still in line with our core competency of moving people and hauling people's excess away. So it's going to allow us to, I think, expand our pie long term. Yeah,
the transition from, because I think a lot of entrepreneurs, you're always chasing the woman in the red dress. Like, it's like, oh, that looks so much more glamorous and easy. And especially with what you guys do, you guys nail the brand. So like, it's such a palpable brand and so easy in terms of making yourselves known.
Right.
But then your ability to not be like, oh, well, then we can just, you know, like I heard on the Dan podcast, it's like, let's go into boxing.
Right.
Like, let's start being a box manufacturer and that type of stuff. How in the hard times early on were you not like, okay, we understand these core competencies of how to build a business. Let's go start from zero again.
Yeah. I think I think we all as entrepreneurs suffer from shiny object syndrome. I call it, you know, ADD stands for all damn day. You're chasing shiny objects, the red dress or the grass green, or that business looks easier. Some of which we've chased, and every time I've chased another business idea, I feel like it's maybe one step in a good direction for that idea, but 3 steps in the wrong direction because I'm taking my eye off the ball, my focus away from College H.U.N.K.S. And I think a mentor told me early on, you know, you can't ride more than one bicycle at the same time or ride more than one horse at the same time. And, you know, maybe you can get to a point where you've got a chariot with multiple horses or a, you know, sort of a fleet of horses, but you've still got somebody that's got to ride each different horse in the stable. And so for me, you cannot replace compound focus and compound effort. Mm-hmm. No matter where you try to slice it, no matter where you try to, you know, want to be multiple income streams or multiple businesses, you're taking away from something. And so like we've done real estate over the years. We've started other businesses. Some have gone nowhere. One business, Trash Butler, has actually done quite well. But every time we're putting energy into that one, it's taking energy away from the other. And there's no right or wrong to it. That's not to say you should only have one business, right? Like I have 4 kids. I can't pour as much energy into each of my 4 kids as somebody with 1 kid.
Yeah.
And so you just have to be, I think, smarter, a little bit more disciplined, have at least in the business context, have a quarterback or a leader for any business line or business division. There's, a saying that we always talk about in business: ask who, not how. If you got an idea, who is going to do it? Is it going to be me? Is it going to be you? Is it going to be somebody else on our team? And if they're going to be doing that, or what's their expertise that's going to allow them to do it? And then I also joke sometimes, because like there's no shortage of good ideas. I always joke or try to remind myself not to chase them. Is like, yeah, you can make tens of dollars doing that. Like that idea sounds great, but like, what's the upside versus our business today does roughly 300 million a year in sales. If we 3x'd our business that we're doing today, it could be $1 billion company. So if I go start another business that's doing 5 million and I 3x that, it's a $15 million company. And like, what am I talking about here? Why am I even contemplating that? And it's very difficult to block out those distractions when you're entrepreneurial, especially in the startup phase, because you're not at scale like we are today. You're just thinking about trying to get to scale, and something somebody else is doing, especially with social media, looks like it could be easier or faster or not as much headache. And I mean, yes, there's going to be, the unicorn stories that you hear. And to me, that's like, okay, you could get drafted top 10 in the NBA, or you could win the lottery, but the reality is the majority of business owners and entrepreneurs are going to be successful through, having something that adds value, and then just having a great team and a level of discipline and sort of time horizon that's going to allow it to build.
Nobody talks about focus being like probably the number one skill you can have as an entrepreneur, because again, we talked about it earlier in the show, like we do have this, like entrepreneurs do have this like energy, like this untapped energy. It's almost like I always talk to people about, even our team, I have to instill in them at this stage, being 3.5, almost 4 years in. It's like, you have to have a appetite that like 1% of the 1% have. And you also have to have an ability to have delayed gratification that the 1% of the 1% have. Not everybody's built like that.
Yeah.
A lot of people are okay with the idea of like, I just want to do this. I don't want to really work that hard, or I want to do a bunch of different things. And we're kind of taught that through like early in life, like multiple extracurricular activities, you're in the chess club, you're in this, you're in that, or you walk into like a consulting company where you're managing all these different businesses. So you're always getting different stimulus. But a true entrepreneur, it's that all in and that okay failing.
Right.
That I think is probably the hardest thing for most people to like mentally deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a balance. You got to have a level of, risk tolerance and pain threshold, pain tolerance, I think, because man, I can't say I've ever met an entrepreneur that says I made more money faster than I thought I was going to when I started out on that journey, right? It's always going to take longer. It's always going to be a lot harder because, like you said, we're wired slightly different as entrepreneurs. We have this inherent optimism. It's going to work. If you didn't believe it was going to work, you wouldn't start it. And you've got to have some of this unwavering belief, even in the face of adversity, that it's going to work. But nothing's easier. I always tell our franchisees this when they start our business, like, you're never going to be happier in this business than the very first day. Because like after that very first day, reality sinks in, you get slapped in the face, but it's going to be the most fulfilling, most rewarding journey, outside of maybe parenthood that you'll ever, embark on, because you're going to see the rewards that come from that personally, financially, purposefully, and everything else.
So obviously, I'd be remiss not to talk about Shark Tank. You guys were episode 1, season 1. How did that come about? And then was that the catalyst moment that just kind of blew everything up?
It was funny. We were kind of just had our eyes and ears open for opportunities to gain media attention in those early days. And there was an ad in Entrepreneur magazine, and it said, looking for entrepreneurs to pitch a business idea for a TV show pilot. And that was all it said. And we were like, okay, this could be an interesting opportunity. Who knows if it'll even go to air. And so we had a sister company that we had joked about starting called College Foxes Packing Boxes. It was the Sharks' reaction was very similar. It was laughter. But we thought, this is Hollywood, it's reality TV, whatever it is that they're trying to create here. Like, let's just not pitch. We don't really need capital right now for College H.U.N.K.S. Like, let's pitch this sister company. We can talk about College H.U.N.K.S. at worst, we'll get on television. At best, maybe we get a cool investor and we could, grow the business. And so we went into it really not having high expectations. We got selected for the callback. We flew out to LA. We shot in the, I think it was like the Seinfeld Studios or something like that. It was really cool experience. But these sharks, people always ask me, like, do you wish you had done the deal? We got an offer from Robert Herjavec, and we also got really grilled and beat up by Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful. We didn't know who they were coming into the show. Like, this show didn't exist. So to us, they didn't tell us who they were before we went on. We walked into this room, and there's 4 guys and a woman, Barbara Corcoran, staring at us and asking us questions about this pitch. And so to us, it was like, who's this guy? He's a jerk, Kevin O'Leary. Like, Robert, he must be successful because he's offering us $250,000.
Yeah.
But like, we didn't really know anything else beyond that. Now today, obviously, anybody's going on the show has going to have done their homework, read the show, watched the show, read up on these people. They're TV celebrities now. They've kind of spanned beyond business gurus to television celebrities. But back then, they were just business guys to me. And so, it was great exposure. People didn't watch the show as much back then as they do now. So I joke, like, we should be getting royalty checks for the show being on for 15 years later. Because if it weren't for our first episode, they might not have made a second episode. We were at pilot episode 1 that then went to air. And so I don't know if that necessarily put us on the map, but it definitely was our first national television experience. That led to some of the other reality TV shows that we've done since. We were on a dating show before we ended up with our respective spouses, where it was called Millionaire Matchmaker. It was on Bravo. Omar picked up his date in a College H.U.N.K.S truck. I picked up my date in a red Bentley, and it was sort of like this. It would have been a meme today if those had existed back then. It was like this, date fail, date success, but the truck was plastered all over. Unlike the viralness of memes that would happen today, the show reran every other hour, it seemed. And so people saw the trucks. People would reach out to us via email, or I think Facebook was still active back then. So people would connect with the brand on Facebook. And so that showed, I think, the power of, again, media exposure, consumer brand. How do we get people to know about us? And so even today, when people say like, oh, I've seen your company on, I like wait to see which show they're going to mention, because we've been on so many different, shows and everything.
Did you Undercover Boss?
More recently, we did Undercover Boss.
What was that experience like?
That was a really cool experience. We both went in disguise into different franchises and had to haul junk, move furniture. I was doing it in, I think, St. Louis in the snow. Omar was in Boise, Idaho, and Virginia, and allowed us to really, I think, there's this concept, I think it's like Japanese manufacturing concept called Go to Gemba, where you're walking the shop floor, the factory floor, to really get a perspective of what's really going on in the business. And we had never done that. And so it took us having to do a reality show, or, doing a reality show to go undercover and do it. Obviously, you're not getting the full experience because there's cameras and everything else along those lines. And they think the employees think you're filming some other show where you're auditioning for the company, is sort of the ruse that they tell them. But it was incredible experience. It was an opportunity to really see kind of firsthand what the front line was experiencing. Were our values that we were espousing from this quote unquote ivory tower really making it to the front lines 20 years later? So that was an incredible experience as well. That getting on that show was a testament of persistence. When that show first came out, it was probably 10 years before we actually came on it. It was shortly after we did Shark Tank. I was like, man, that would be a really fun show to get on. And we got turned down, I think, because we had done Shark Tank so recently. And then they kind of pivoted the show to Celebrity Undercover Boss. Then they pivoted the show again. Then it got canceled. Then it got picked back up. And so I would follow up like once a year or every other quarter to say, hey, we'd still be interested in doing the show. We think our brand would be fun for it. We think it'd be insightful for the audience. And we probably heard 7 or 8 no's, or just complete crickets on the other end of the email. And eventually, I guess my email reached somebody who circled back and had us come on.
Does that help, like, from a franchise perspective? I feel like branding and franchising is one of the, like, obviously your service, your SOPs, all of that is a testament to whether the franchisee can have success, but the actual brand being the catalyst for a franchise. Was that what you and Omar understood from the very beginning of, like, we have to always be getting this brand out here to sell franchises and that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, we wanted to create an iconic culture and an iconic brand. And I think the only way you do that, one of our core values is always branding. And the only way you do that is constantly being proud of what you're doing, proud of the brand, the uniform that you're wearing. And, you know, it's I think about back to the early days, like in the early days, we were the only ones shouting from the rooftop, telling people what we were doing. And I always say, especially to early stage entrepreneurs, if you're not the one that's going out and doing that, who's going to do that for you? Like nobody. Yeah. Maybe some of your early customers or investors or, you know, friends and family will help evangelize for you, but you got to be the most proud representative of your brand and be your best brand ambassador. And then you want to inspire other people to be a part of that as well. And so there's many different touch points to do that. You know, the way your employee experience is, the way your client interactions are, the way your brand is perceived in the community, the way you leverage media or portray yourself through the media is how the brand gets developed. And so I think, again, none of that happened overnight. It was intentional from the very early days. Some of it just, I think, a little bit through instinct, but also not recognizing that it works and that it was important. It's something that we valued as important to our brand. And so, again, that compounds itself. It attracts people that want to be associated with the brand, whether it's franchise owners, or now we've got a whole national accounts platform that we're working with in national companies that can benefit from our services in multiple markets because we've got a national footprint. And I've actually been on, I would say, at least 4 or 5 phone calls with a national account prospect where I've joined the team just to kind of introduce what we're doing. And they've said verbatim, we've used you guys personally. You know, I used you at my mother's house, or I used you at my house for my last move, or I actually used you guys to clean out a garage. I'm familiar with your brand. You don't need to sell us. Like, we know what you guys do and how you do it. We had a good experience. Obviously, that's critical. And we're ready to do business with our company. And I'm like, that's the power of a brand. That's what a franchise owner is believing in and investing in. Eventually, the brand can get big enough where you can spend mass media dollars on commercials, more top of funnel awareness. But we've always been gritty and like I said, shoestring to where like we didn't have that luxury of investing. So we've had to figure out other ways to get the brand exposure. Yeah.
Did you guys ever do like traditional PR? Like what, like, because we're obviously, our business is media. So we're like very keenly aware of like the power of media. But my thought process always is, you know, do it yourself, especially now that we have the distribution of social media. It's like you building your own brand has a much higher ROI than trying to leverage other people's brands to promote yourself, whether it be commercials, even like Facebook ads and things of that nature, I think are less like important than something like traditional, like grassroots organic media.
Yeah. I think it's not an either or. I think it's an and. I think it can be both. I think that, to your point, the grassroots stuff is the stuff that has to be the foundational elements of building a brand. I think that, you know, I used to feel a little bit self-conscious about some of the self-promotional stuff we would do and the PR that we would do. You know, it's like how that would be viewed by others. But then, you know, it's like, okay, are we publicity hounds? Are we, shameless promoters? But like at the end of the day, it's all marketing and it's all branding, and you've got to be proud of what it is that you're doing. Know that whatever it's a service or product is helping people, like you can't hold that back from people. And it's about getting it out there as best you can. And so, yeah, in today's day and age, it's leveraging your own personal brand or leveraging media, both traditional and non-traditional. We've gone through various different iterations. Like we've done some outreach ourselves to mainstream media just to pitch an idea. We've hired third-party PR firms to try to go out and get attention for our brand or stories published or written about us. We've hired people in-house. In the early days, I tried to hire like interns, and I would give them commissions or bonuses if they landed us a media hit or a story. And so I think there's a multitude of ways to do it. At the end of the day, if we're talking about just like media, whether it's reporters or nowadays social media, like everybody needs something that they're going to talk about today, tomorrow, the next day. And so we would always think about like, what is the angle or what is the pitch that we could be helpful with? And ideally, if you are working with a PR firm, they're also coming up with ideas. Historically, I haven't had a lot of success with those. We have a firm we're working with now that's actually, I think, really gets it and understands sort of the way media thinks and works, and has done a good job of getting us publicity. Like we did this documentary about the hurricanes in Tampa, and our PR partner got all the local media out there, the Business Journal, the local stations, they were all covering it. And, you know, I thought that was impressive. Like, not everybody can get the media to come tell a story.
Yeah.
I thought it was newsworthy, but not all, the news doesn't always respond, or they might have had, you know, something urgent going on that they had to cover. So
yeah, it's the hook point. What are people like? It's one thing to get an article written, but it's like, what are people going to consume? How are you positioning? Like, what storylines were consistent through your guys' history in that media world?
Well, believe it or not, just the story of the business and how it got started has always resurfaced. I think it's kind of an inspirational, relatable story. Two college buddies, a beat-up cargo van, a catchy name. Their mom gave it to them, and they started it, and now look at them now. And now you can weave in, they've done these shows, or now you can weave in, they're purpose-driven and values-based. Look at what they're doing for the community. Look at what they're, you know, done for, their 2-for-1 giving partnership. Now we can bring in, I'm passionate about human interest stories because I think they are generally positive. I think they portray the brand, have the opportunity to portray the brand in a positive light, but by shining the human aspects of the business. So I'm trying to pull in some of our different franchisees and some of the stories that they have to tell that, you know, are shining success stories of business ownership, team members that have gone and done some incredible things, both inside and outside of the organization. So those are the things that I've always viewed as hooks. Look, we've had some one-off opportunistic PR coverages here and there, like when the whole name, image, and likeness partnership programs came out for college athletes. My business partner and his buddy, who also went to University of Miami, they drove down to Miami and signed the Miami quarterback at 12:01 a.m., like the night that it went into effect, the law of being able to sign college athletes. It went viral, got picked up by like ESPN and Bleacher Report and all these things. College H.U.N.K.S signs first NIL deal because nobody knew what was going to happen there. So it was like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. So like, obviously the big brands and the collectives have way outbid what we're capable of doing in an athlete, you know, partnership. But because we were sort of the first to get there and we got it out on the socials and we got it out to the mainstream media, it actually got shared. And people would reach out to us even today sometimes thinking that we're like this expert in NIL partnerships. Like, oh, you guys are doing all this stuff with the NIL. And like, we've done quite a few, but after that one, we actually sort of replicated that a few different times, but with very niche partnerships. And what I mean by that is like, we signed the University of Florida chess team to an NIL deal.
That's so smart, though.
You know, like the first women's basketball team was UCF that we signed like really shortly after the Miami quarterback. And because when we signed those, it's interesting or unique enough that the media would talk about it again. So, you know, we didn't have the big enough budget to go, you know, give these guys, you know,
break the record,
7-figure deals, but we could get these sort of niche one-off stories that the media thought was intriguing, and the people that were receiving those deals, you know, their doors weren't getting knocked down by brands to get a deal. So help, you know, elevate their awareness as well.
Talk to me about your relationship with Omar, because I think it's, I want to, if everything goes according to plan, I want to write a book on why you should get into business with your friends. Cause I think it's like one of the most gratifying, like truly like soul fulfilling things that you can do. It's also easily one of the hardest things you ever do in business. Like building a business is hard enough. Getting into business with your friends might be 10x as hard, because you have to have hard conversations, go through rough times. Like you have to do all that. How have you guys been able to maintain the relationship that you guys have?
Yeah. So that's, I think that'd be a great book idea, by the way. And I remember there was a book I read, I think it was Michael Keaton from Disney. And, anyway, he was talking about the partnerships aspect of that aspect and sort of the value of having partnership. I think a lot of, not just male, but I think a lot of young kids, they grow up with these friendships, middle school, high school, even college. And they're like, man, wouldn't it be cool to be like doing something together when we grow up, and we could be in business together, and we could be, you know, celebrating and doing all these things. And so like we had that same vision, and I would say we are living it out. But I think the key to that for us has been that our values and our vision have been in alignment. And while we may not always agree on tactic or strategy, or even, we may be resentful temporarily about X, Y, and Z, we're able to kind of keep it moving very easily. Like something could, and some of that might be just like a personality trait, but some of it I think has been also intentional, is like we don't take things personally. Like I could, have a direct conversation in the early days, a physical altercation, and just keep it moving. And we're just right back to business. We're not harboring resentment. We're not talking about the other person. Now it's, even more, the stakes are higher. We've got spouses. So it's like, it would be easy for me to go home and, complain about something Omar is doing. And, that dynamic could get, strained, and it happens in business partnerships, right? When, a spouse comes into the equation, or family starts, there's other forces that start pulling at it when from before, we were just two single bachelors with, all the time in the world, all the possibilities ahead of us. And
it's
so
like you guys were almost dating each other.
Yeah. It's like, we were friends, and then we became business partners, and our parents would call each other, business partner in-laws, right?
It's a marriage.
When we would get together. And so I think all the things that make any partnership, a marriage valuable and impactful and sustainable holds true with a business partnership. And then if there's a friendship component to the business partnership, trying to stay true to that friendship, trying to not let the friendship get strained by the stresses of business. And all of these things that I'm stating, like, it's not perfect. No marriage is, no business partnership is. But I think there is the values greatly outweigh the negatives, as long as you're able to withstand the blips along the way.
So you guys are doing $300 million in sales. Year 2, you guys do $1 million. So you're probably sitting there going, okay, so, 3 years later, we should be, 50, whatever. I'm always so curious, because we have these conversations all the time. Do you have like pinch me moments, or are you so focused on like the mission of what you're doing that it's hard to ever have the perspective of like what started as like a summer kind of like fun project turns into this, $300 million a year business? Yeah.
So the two biggest pinch me moments for me are at our annual franchise conference. So every year we bring all the franchise owners here to Tampa. They bring their team members. We bring our team members. We bring in guest speakers. We do awards. It's high energy. It's 2.5 days, 3 days. That's always a pinch me moment, because to see this sea of orange and green, and everybody's hyped up and excited and energized and enthusiastic, that's like, holy shit. Like, what did, we create, like, starting from this beat up cargo van? And we just celebrated our 20-year anniversary. So we did it really big this past year. We brought in Ludacris for a private concert.
That's insane.
He was we did that because he was our soundtrack in 2005, like when we were on the trucks, right? Like that's when he was really big, or coming out, for the first time. And so that's the biggest pinch me moment. But now seeing the successes of our franchise owners and team members is a huge pinch me moment, because see the impact that the brand and the platform has been able to facilitate for others. Our top franchise owner in Long Island, they're doing over 10 million a year revenue. They just bought this, what I would describe as estate in Long Island, overlooking the water, incredible sunsets. I'm envious of their sunsets. We've got a franchise owner in Kalamazoo who's now just opened his third location, over 4 million a year revenue in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And he's just, crushing it. And he tells you his personal story. He had some very humble beginnings, some very challenging, mistakes that he made early on in his teen, early adult life, that he's been able to bounce back from. He's got his son helping him run the business. And so to see that type of impact and create sort of a generational impact for people, not the finances is great, but to see what that actually does for people's lives and families is, I think, more rewarding than I can put into words. And so when I see that, like, and hear those stories or see those examples, I'm like, those are for sure pinch me moments.
I'm interested because I think being able to have these conversations, you learn obviously the impact of money and like what money can do, but you start to realize that if money is the only objective, you're going to run out of fuel really, really quickly. I'm interested, what has shocked you the most about being in the position that you're in now financially? And then what has been like the most like, I thought this would have been like more exciting, or like more like, oh, I thought this would have been a bigger moment for me.
Yeah. So I think the access that money provides is great. You know, it gives you, in my case, something I would only dream of, but being able to fly privately as an example, or being able to, you know, take a vacation with my kids that I thought was something that was like completely out of reach, nothing I experienced as a kid myself. Those are cool. Those are wow moments for sure. But somebody's always going to have a bigger plane, a bigger boat, a nicer house, or a nicer vacation. And so if that becomes, to your point, the sole focus, you're always operating from a source of scarcity, not abundance. You're always operating from a source of what do I not have versus look how far we've come. And so I think the biggest eye opener for me as I'm, you know, into my 40s is like, if you've got this entrepreneurial drive, you probably started with this vision of I'm going to create X and then I'm going to be good. But the problem is you get X, and that hunger, that beast inside you is like, well, what's X plus Y?
Yep.
Now I need to go get X plus Y. And so it's a never ending journey. And I think the wise words I've tried to listen to are folks in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s to say, like, there's more to it. You've got, if you're just chasing it, like, you're going to reach 70 or 80 and you're going to look back and you're like, okay, yeah, I did a lot of cool stuff. I achieved a lot of great stuff, but was I fulfilled along the way? You know, or did I feel empty? Did I feel this craving or emptiness along the way? And so I've tried to make this shift of like, okay, the goalpost is always going to keep moving, but that's icing on the cake. Like the true win is the foundational purpose of the business, the vision of the business, the purpose that we're creating. And if we can create that, which we became intentional about early on, then even when things are difficult, you're still getting out of bed in the morning. Even when things are difficult, you're going to still have loyal team members that want to ride with you and keep pushing and keep, you know, persevering. But if the money is the sole goal, you're going to be very disappointed very early, because we talked about earlier, nobody makes as much as fast as they thought they would. Some people do, but they're the lucky few.
Yeah.
You know, that I equate to like winning the lottery, or hitting it big in Vegas, right? And so if we're being realists about it, I think just being able to shift the perspective to be grateful for what you've been able to accomplish, no matter where you are in the journey, and then be excited about what's ahead, but not like nagging lack. And especially, again, we talked about social media. It's so easy to compare, and the problem is, you know, as you get into bigger rooms, as your business grows, as your profile grows, there's bigger people in that room. So all of a sudden you feel less than once again. And so you're like, you've got to get out of your head in that respect. And so as money has come in, as we've gotten bigger, I think having that mindset. And then the other thing I'll mention is not getting complacent. Like, I always thought like, hey, if I could just get to this amount, I'd be cool. I could just go sit on the beach and chill and relax. And, you know, like, I think I've been very observant of high achievers that don't get complacent. I saw a Nick Saban interview, and he said, complacency leads to bad decisions lead to bad outcomes. And I think with this entrepreneurial restlessness that we have, if we don't have something productive that we're attaching our energy towards, it could get misdirected and misguided very easily.
Naval says that if he had to do it all again, he would have done it with less anger and like more appreciation for the moment that he was in. Cause it's like, even for myself, being able to talk to somebody like you, it's like, I would love to skip the line. Like, I'd love to be in your shoes. Obviously everybody would, but the idea of being, it's this idea of like never being complacent, but being okay with where you are right now.
Yeah.
Like, the ability to understand media and understand like narrative and storytelling and all that stuff has been kind of a help for me. Cause even at the lowest point, I'm like, this is what great stories are made of. If the prince always got the princess right away, it wouldn't be in Disney. It's the journey, and it's the where you came from to where you're going, that ability. But then for you getting to that peak, how are you able to then like create a new one? Like, how are you able to go, because you're at 300 now.
Right.
It's not like your life is going to wildly change from 300 to 500, 500 to $1 billion. It's like, you're still going to be able to fly private. You might get a bigger boat. You might get like better vacations, but like, it's not going to change your life per se. So like, what is that drive? What is that motivation?
Yeah. So for me, it boils down to what I've defined as maximization of potential. That's the best way I can put it. Is like God, or whoever you want to believe in, gave me some set of gifts and opportunities that I can use and I can develop, you know, just like a talented athlete or artist was bestowed certain like natural gifts. But those like undeveloped to me is like undeveloped talent, like not wasted talent, but sort of like, why not maximize what you're capable of? And so I think about that in my own context as a leader, as a father, as a husband, as a human. But then I think about that in the context of the people that work with me in my organization, the people that I'm able to influence or impact. And then I think of it in the context of this brand. Like, it started out with a beat up cargo van. Here it is now today. How cool would it be if it got bigger and impacted more lives and did more, created more opportunity for team members, for employees, for franchise owners, for clients to benefit from what we do, to inspire people with telling our story. So I view it in the context of maximize potential. You know, some people might just say, continuous progress, like, the saying, if you're not growing, you're dying.
Yeah.
And so, maybe it's that aspect or that element of it. Like, I don't want to just die on the vine. I don't want to just sort of set it, forget it, and, hang up the shoes and ride off into the sunset. My role may evolve in the process. I may not be able to run as hard or have as much fire in the belly as I did in the early days. But I think the piece that drives me is to say, like, okay, how much better can I get to maximize my potential? How much better can my people get? And how much better can the brand get? And that's the framework that I look at it.
It's so cool because and being an entrepreneur, that gratifying factor of being able to, like, at the very beginning, provide a job, like be able to be like, you can, and then we have the ability to create our work environment for the people that work for us. Like, you can create a one-of-one experience. Like, my favorite thing that somebody that worked on to join the team last year got in the car third day. He's like, I woke up excited for work for the first time ever. And I was like, that moment is like the moment, because it's like, it's so, I guess being in the shoes that you're in, and some of the shoes, like some of the moments that I have, it's like, it's never gonna be what you thought. Like, you're always gonna be like, whether it's bigger than you ever thought or not, you're not where you want to be yet. So it's like the ability to kind of get motivated through what you're doing for others is like the thing that you always come back to, even on the worst day. It's like, for us, it's like the ability to just like pay payroll. You're like, yes, like awesome. Like, people were able to get groceries. They were able to pay rent, like, because of the hard work that we did. We might not have captured anything. Like, I tell the team all the time, like, I'm still making the same money that I started, that I am now. That's not to say that obviously that will be like that forever, but it's like the ability to be okay with that and be like, I'm not in this to me personally make more money. I want to help people, and I want to help the people that work for us to be able to spur that.
I think for me, it's like this never ending trying to find the right balance of drive and grit and hunger with peace and presence and poise. Yeah. Because, like, sometimes I look back and I'm like, well, would I be here at this level if I wasn't as hungry or feel like I was chasing a rabbit, in those early days, and then I think about some of the people that just, continue to 10X or level up. And it's like, some people just never take the foot off the gas, and they never, like, they've got an edge all the way to the grave.
And they're probably miserable.
They may be miserable. I can't get in their head, but or maybe they just, their only source of satisfaction is just continuously grinding their stress bone down to But I like, that's not what I want. So, like, I feel like I've got to find this sort of happy medium of, like, how do I stay driven, motivated, and grind, but know that I'm not just chasing this shallow, ever moving goalpost that, is always going to be out of reach, and do it in a way that's meaningful, impactful, and fulfilling. And so I think that's the aspirational side that I'm looking to try to create. That's the side that I kind of get up every day and sort of frame my mindset of, like, what I'm going to achieve. None of what I'm describing is, like, perfect. It doesn't happen overnight. And there's, I'd be lying if there wasn't days where I'm like, I just want to lay down and crawl up into a fetal position and, go under the covers and not go do any of this.
Yeah.
That happens too. So yeah, I think it's a process. Like I had a kind of a bit of an epiphany the other day. Like I live in an old house, in a historic house. And so it's inevitably got something wrong with it. Like we're restoring parts of it and refurbishing parts of it and making it nicer. But like there's always going to be something broken. Like there's always something broken in our business. Like I could come here and point out everything that's broken. There's always, something that could be done better or improved. And the moment that before we moved into the house we're in now, I was in a house that I completely redid from top to bottom, soup to nuts, was absolutely perfect. And when we went to sell it, the oven stopped working right before we closed. The gas fireplace for some reason wasn't working. We had to have the fire guy, this linear, state-of-the-art pool linear fireplace, beautiful feature, looks amazing on social media, but stopped working. And so I'm like, everything breaks. Like, we all going to end up, going to the grave at some point, even with modern technology and these AI bots that are going to keep us alive forever. So I think just being at peace with the imperfection is something I've always had to try to come to grips with, because I would get spun up. My wife would tell me I could walk in a room, everything would be perfect in it, and I could be like, oh, that's offline right there. And it's like a superpower too, because details matter in business. Like we can't just accept sloppiness. We got to have our shirts tucked in. We got to be on time. We got to, present well. We got to be TV ready, as I say, but then, we also got to accept or make peace with the imperfections along the way as well.
What has it been like? When did you get married?
2013. So it's almost 12 years ago.
So 12 years, the business has been around for 20. How did that change your life?
I would say it took me some maturation process to evolve into both marriage and parenthood.
Yeah.
Because pre-both, I was just like, I had nobody to answer to or worry about.
Yeah.
It was like, me and Omar, we're running, bring people along with us, we're running, and this is the sole focus is College H.U.N.K.S. And then you get into a relationship and then you have kids. I want to say priorities shift, but you got to now try to balance all these different energies. And it's challenging. I don't have a perfect answer for it. I would say, I always tell people, for me, my most difficult kid, we have 4 now, my most difficult kid adjustment was adjusting to the first.
Yeah.
Because I was used to, I got to go to a work trip. I got to go do, a conference. I'm working late tonight. And then we had this kid that was waking and needing to be fed and changed and sleep every 3 hours. That was I felt like I was in a spin cycle and, whoa, business, what about my business?
Yeah.
Very disorienting. Like I got smacked in the head, like the Rocky scene. Yeah. I was like, cut me. Okay, I'm coming back. I'm ready for another round.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's an evolution. It's a maturation. I had to try to cut back on some of the stuff that maybe, when you're single and running a business, you can burn the candle by going out and drinking and going to these networking events or going to these Vegas conferences and staying out late and going to the morning session and coming home and getting right back into the business. But, when you've got a spouse and kids, you can't be, and you're getting older, so you physically can't bounce back as quick. You've got to make some tough decisions.
I want to get you out of here, but the thing I want to understand, because you were talking about in one of the shows that I watched that you, like, one of the catalysts was obviously the E-Myth, which is like, I'm a huge reader. I love reading. It's like one of the things that, like, in a world now being an entrepreneur, you're always sold like the mastermind or the coach or the mentor and these types of things. And I did it at the very start of the business. And ever since then, I've kind of been like anti-guru, anti-mastermind, because it's this idea of somebody's supposed to know what's best for you when you live it all the time.
Yeah.
What was either bust that myth for me or just like speak to what 10X you personally, business-wise, like what were the catalysts for you?
So I'm a big believer in peer groups and mentors. So I do think there's a place for masterminds and maybe even, gurus, if you will. But I think what you cannot replace, especially nowadays with ChatGPT and everything else, is we cannot replace creative thought, critical thinking, or decision making.
Yes.
Like those three things, you've got to still have the capability and ability to discern and do and create and think. And so like if your default is to go ask ChatGPT, that's fine, but don't just take that as the gospel of what you got to go run and do. If your default is to call your mentor, your guru, and get his perspective or her perspective, I was just talking about this with somebody on my team. That's great. Take their feedback, but don't just eat out of their hands and run chase, because they don't have the context or perspective of what you're living. And so there's a human element still, even with AI, that you've got to be able to tap into and leverage. Use the AI or the mentors or the gurus or the masterminds as a sounding board, as a data point, but don't let that determine every single decision that you make. So I think that's the piece there. I joined, as soon as we hit 1 million in revenue, we joined the Entrepreneurs Organization, and you create these smaller forum groups. And I'm a big advocate of that. Now, more recently, I'm in YPO, Young Presidents Organization, very similar framework. I do think there's value in having a sounding board, because when you're on this business leadership journey, it can be lonely. Whether you're the entrepreneur or a team member in an entrepreneurial organization, the dinner side chats with your spouse, they don't understand necessarily what you're going through day to day. Your conversations with your friends on the softball team, like that have a steady day job, they don't fully contemplate what the highs and lows are like, both emotional as well as, tactically or mentally. And so I think having a group, there's value in that. If it's the right group with the right sort of values in mind for your success, not just trying to take your subscription fee or whatever to, run you through the process.
Well, it's the problem that I have with YPO, like some of our clients are in YPO. I think that's a great, because you're talking with people that have done it. Mm-hmm. I heard this guy talk about like, well, the best business coach doesn't necessarily need to be somebody that's done what you've done, because like Bill Belichick didn't play football.
Right.
But at the same time, business is so contextual. Yeah. Like it's not like obviously have SOPs, right? Be a good leader, invest into your team. Like, these are all like obviously core concepts, but being able to bounce off ideas, like all of our clients are like very like high level entrepreneurs, and it's like the best education possible. It's why I started the podcast. I was like, at the time we started the podcast, I didn't have money to do a $5,000 mastermind, but if I could have an hour and a half where I sat down and I had a conversation, that obviously it's not just me asking questions and being like, what should I do? But like trying to understand the mindset behind it. That to me, from people that have been there, done that, is more impactful than somebody that got to 10K a month and now is selling you on how to get to 10K a month. Right. But they didn't know how to get to 50. You know what I mean? Like that's why they're selling you on this experience.
Yeah. No, and I think there's truth to that. And I think there's value in evolving your mentorship or your sphere group, your peer group or your influence group as well as you grow or as you evolve. Like, when I was early in my business, I didn't need I didn't need to talk to anybody who was married with kids about what it's like to run a business being married with kids. But once I got married and started having kids, it's like, I need some perspective here. Like, how are you guys juggling this? How are you guys, what do you do in this situation? Has anybody dealt with that before?
Yeah.
And so I think to your point, there's context about where you are in the journey as well that is lacking if you're just trying to fit a one size fits all. And that's why I'm such an advocate about reading, because like you could pick up nuggets reading books that just light a match, and spark that you can bring into your business so easily. And yeah, I mean, there's frameworks that some, are systemized and structured that can be applied into different businesses that have evolved in, coaching programs and consulting organizations. Like we work with EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. We work with an implementer for that. And I think that's a solid sort of framework for organizing the business. There's others like that. So I think it's finding the right fit and the right mix to assist and guide along the way.
Did you ever read Good to Great by Jim Collins?
Oh, yes.
That is, I'm almost finished with it. It's my favorite book that I've ever read.
I'm reading another one by him. I'm not sure if it was a prequel or a follow-up sequel to Good to Great, which is Beyond Entrepreneurship 2.0, BE 2.0. And it's basically reiterates a lot of the Good to Great material, but it's somewhat actionable. And I heard him speak for like 4 hours this past April, and I had seen him speak. The last time I'd seen him speak was like 15 years ago, but I was just vigorously taking notes. And we, for whatever reason, hadn't done our flywheel at College H.U.N.K.S. Like it had existed, but we hadn't really defined out the flywheel. So I came out of that. I was like, guys, we've got to do our flywheel. And our next year's franchise conference has to be everything about the flywheel. We got to teach every single franchisee, what these 5 components of our flywheel are, how they can make this spin faster in their business. And all of the decisions that we make have to be made in the context of, does it fit with this flywheel? So
like the hedgehog concept.
I think there's the hedgehog concept, which is like, what can you be the best in the world at?
What are you passionate
about? What would be missing if you went away? And then the flywheel concept is sort of this concept that when you start your business, there's usually 5 or 6 components that include the hedgehog component. That as you're pushing them at the beginning, it feels like you're just like inching forward, but eventually they start to sort of feed into each other, and it creates its sort of own momentum as a result.
What last question? Thank you so much for your time, by the way. What was the most impactful books that you've ever read?
Most impactful books. Well, Good to Great was certainly one of them. The E-Myth we talked about. Oldie but Goodie, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Great one.
Maximum Achievement by Brian Tracy, another oldie but goodie. And then the other one is also a traditional book, Dale Carnegie, not How to Win Friends and Influence People, although that's a great book, but How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. I read that book. It was actually a YPO friend of mine who recommended it to me. And at the time, I was just struggling with a lot of anxiety and ruminations about different things. And it's, the book was written 100 years ago, but it just talks about the very human nature that we have to worry about stuff. And so there you go.
I love it. Perfect timing.
Yeah,
Lights came on.
Lights came on.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Appreciate it, brother. It was great.